Hello and welcome to today's Women of Power show. I'm Laura Topper and I'm here and joined by our super guest today, Dr. Andrea Slominski. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Andrea. Welcome.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to the US. Good evening to you here and good day to your viewers around the world. I'm happy to be here. Nice to see you, Laura.
It's so brilliant that you're here. I'm so happy that you said yes to coming onto the show because every week there's a conversation here, a dialogue, inspiring and uplifting and educating women on the truth of who we are and whether that's for our business, our lives, relationships, health. There are so many aspects that that we could talk about week after week to empower us to be those bold leaders that we're here to be. So I'm just feeling really overjoyed that you're here, Dr. Andrea. And I'd like to share a little bit of your bio for the listeners and viewers, if that are here right now or at any point that you're joining, just to know that Dr. Andrea is really somebody who has gone in depth with her research on women and mythology and the labyrinth. That's how I discovered you, because you have a great YouTube channel with so many amazing videos about mythology. You help midlife women that are journeying midlife and adventuring that phase in their lives to really see the truth of who they are. And often during midlife, which is very separate from menopause, because that can kick in at any time, that can be with us at any time of our lives. But there is an incredible awakening happening during midlife. And Dr. Andrea is that person who assists women with perimenopause and menopause and midlife, to use creativity, or using creativity and story and mythology and ritual and ceremony for women to empower themselves. So Dr. Andrea, you're an extensive researcher and you study a lot, and you've created a methodology that can really help women to navigate these times and these years, which you call the Regency years. I love that. You really coined it there. It's such a great way of being of naming these years. Why Regency?
Well, okay.
Yeah, that's my first question for you as an ADHD conversationalist.
That's great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Regency really came to me as an idea when I was working and researching, writing my PhD dissertation, researching with women, midlife women. And as you said, my methodology and a lot of my research is based in women's mythology as well as depth and archetypal psychology. And so in looking at the historical basis in women's mythology, women are traditionally considered to be living their lives in an embodiment of 3 stages, which is maiden, mother, and crone, as we know.
Yeah.
Well, when I was researching, and I'm not the first to come up with this, but of course it was, or to discover this, but it was really thrilling for me to realize that boomer women, late boomers or Joneses, whatever you call them, and then all the women coming up behind us, millennial, Gen X, Gen Z, are the first generations of women in the history of humanity to live past menopause as a cohort.
Yes.
It has never happened in human history before. Now, there have always been individual old women, or within communities, women who lived to a long life. The great grandmother, the witch at the edge of the medieval forest, who was the healer. I mean, even since the time of Plato, he wrote about menopause. But since 1900, since the turn of the 20th century, the lifespan of women has increased. For women of color, more than doubled, and for white women, over a third. I mean, in 1900, statistically, white women were in the global north, right?
We were in bed at 45, being told never to get up again.
Yeah, white women were men by 41 and women of color by 43.
Right.
So we're living into this entirely new life stage from like, as a cohort, as a large group, from like 50 to 80, 90 and longer. And it's never happened before. So there's no model, there's no map, there's no road signs, there's no trail to follow. And so we're creating this new life stage as we live it. So looking at it from a mythological term, I'm trying to think of the scholar's name. It's evading me at this moment. But one of the scholars that I studied, one of the British early female scholars of women's mythology and Greek mythology, wrote that the goddesses reflect the lives of the women in the culture, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So if the lives of women have expanded to include a new life stage, then the goddess must also, by its
Expand.
very nature, expand. So I'm saying that we are no longer in 3, that we are in 4. And I call it maiden, householder, because not all women have children. Some women live alternative lifestyles, right? And we can mother lots of things. We can mother our careers, our siblings, our family, our friends, ourselves, right? But not all women have children. So I think householder is a really good inclusive term. Maiden, householder, regent, which regency runs from about 45 when we start to enter into midlife, into perimenopause, to about 70 with a little plus next to it, 70 plus. And then we self-designate from that regency time when we're recreating ourselves, trying to figure out who we're going to be in this next stage of life, after career, after family, after nurturing everybody else's garden but our own for 20 or 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Which hormones, instinct, human, patterning, right? DNA engage us in doing that as women. So we get to this point and we're ready to recreate ourselves. And so what I say is that regent women are rediscovering how to create sovereignty in their own life. And a regent is a ruler who holds the throne for one who is not ready.
Right.
We hold the throne for our wise woman to come. We hold our own throne.
And for ourselves, because if this is the first time that as a cohort we've voyaged into this unknown, then we're trailblazing.
Yes,
and
absolutely. Absolutely. And so as regent women, we're holding the seat of regency, of our sovereignty, of recreating ourselves into who we're becoming, into claiming our financial power, our cultural power, and our political power, right?
Yes.
Because this is growing for women all over the world, especially in the global north. So then we need to turn around and help our sisters in the global south, right?
Sure.
So the idea of this is that then we hold the seat of power until we self-designate when we want to go into our wise women years, when we want to retire a little bit from the world and reap our wisdom. And you can see this in many women. Like I like to use the example of Jane Fonda. Even though she's, considered controversial by some people, if you look at her, she's in her 80s. She's still working. She's still acting. She's politically active. She's fighting climate change. And so she has sort of one foot still in regency and one foot in wise woman. And so she's still active in both worlds. So I say that we've expanded into 4 and that it's time for women to claim this growing power that we have, because there are a lot of things that need to be fixed. And women's creative power and managerial approach and problem-solving approach, I think, is what's needed at this time in history.
Absolutely. I think this is fantastic. The way that you have, it's almost like you've inserted an expansion, a paradigm. That's the way you've kind of allowing for a worldview that maybe because it was maiden, mother, wise woman / crone, it's like, okay, well then if I'm going against the wise woman, or if I'm being a wise woman and it's time for me to like take the pedal off, my foot off the pedal, and retire, and all of that kind of that expectation that would have been, it's opening up for, well, no, this is who I am. I'm actually somebody that is trailblazing. I am changing things, and you're giving it, it's like you're giving a permission, or
Well,
you're allowing for women to give ourselves permission to say, own it now. This is
yes,
it.
absolutely. The thing is that I've identified the paradigm. I haven't created it. I'm sort of pointing. I'm saying that something new is here. Something new is happening, and this began with the beginning of the 20th century, because we had the women's suffrage, we had the women's rights movement. At the same time was the beginning of what we consider to be psychology, right? That looking at Freud and Jung and all those that came after, looking at the development of the understanding of archetypal psychology, the human soul, human consciousness, the collective unconscious, the growth of consciousness, which I know you're very involved in. And so, and looking at all of this, and then we get into the women's rights movement, we get into the feminist movement, the goddess movement. All of this has started happening in the 20th century, right? And it's come to a head at a time when what has since early humanity been identified as the archetypal feminine, which is nature, natural systems, the living systems of the earth, right? Compassion, empathy, relational ability, communication ability, all of these attributes that are considered to be part of the archetypal feminine, which of course we're talking about an archetypal energy that exists within men and women. We're not just talking about gender, right? So that this archetypal feminine energy has been in resurgence through women's rights and through the culture since that period of time. And here we are with a whole new life stage, a whole new time to recreate ourselves and figure out what our passion is, at a time when the natural world is in peril of extinction. World, which is the metaphor for the archetypal feminine. I just don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's it's one of the biggest synchronicities in human history.
And not only the natural world, I believe, that that is in peril of distinction. It's the patriarchal system, the empirical system that has been created, that women have slotted themselves into for centuries, or been forced to slot themselves into, and now and it can no longer sustain itself. And women are rising into, well, themselves. We're saying, hang on a minute, there is another way. It is the way of nature. It is the way of the creative, of the nurturer, of the birther, rather than being in these systems that are so well, in that systemic way of just being on a track. We're looking at life in a really different way, in an expanded way.
Absolutely. I mean, it took 2,500 or 3,000 years for patriarchy to become what it is now. And it's a system. It's not men, it's not women, it's a system. We are the fish swimming in the water of patriarchy. We don't see it because we're swimming in it. And it's like being alive means you are participating in it. So how do we switch the paradigm? Because it's detrimental to men and women.
Yes.
It's a worldview. It's a paradigm that is going to have to shift. And we're going to have to make some really quick changes on some levels. Other things are, if we can fix the climate issue, if we can fix our penchant for wanting to kill each other, if we can come to some sort of an agreed sustainability for the future of the planet, then it's also going to take some time to unwind all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it's possible, and I
So
think it's really exciting, but I'm not sure how much of it I'll see in my lifetime, but I'll certainly work towards it.
it's amazing. What was the inspiration for you to journey this, to take to I mean, this is more than a doctorate. This is your way of being, your way of life.
You know,
What happened for you to say yes to this?
that's a really good question. You know, I think my one of my favorite psychologists that I studied in school is James Hillman. And one of the things that he says, which I think is and there's a great book that he's written called The Soul's Code. So if anybody wants to pick that up, it's kind of what I'm talking from. But where when I was a young child, I was completely fascinated with anthropology, archaeology,
Oh,
all of these kinds of things. And then, of course, I grew up and I lived my life and I got into doing other things. And my early career was in the theater, which is the sister of ritual, which is the twin of ritual. And then I ended up actually going, I'm kind of a regent example in some ways. I ended up going back to school at 55 to get my master's and PhD.
yes.
And it was through a series of events where James Hillman says we all incarnate with what he calls a daemon, or it's almost like a spirit or an idea or an angel that incarnates with us, that knows what our destiny is, that knows who we are in our core and what it is we've come to do, and that every so often the daemon gives you a shove towards what you're supposed to be doing, a nudge, a shove, or leads you, right? And there were so many things that happened because when I first went back to grad school, I didn't go to grad school for what I ended up studying. I went somewhere else. And other things happened in my life that actually gave me the shove to move towards whatever. So I don't know. I think that at midlife, when we come around to saying, who am I? What am I going to do now? What is important now? The life that felt like it was so organized and so perfect and fit so well a month ago now feels like a too tight shoe. And I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to do. My meaning, my purpose, my belonging are all dissolving in front of me. And I don't know what's ahead of me. I don't know what to do. And so, getting into that position, you can re-tap into some of these very early longings or very early interests or very early passions, which both Hillman and Jung say tap back into what lit you up as a child. Right? Tap back into that place when you were one in yourself, learning who you were, learning before you were responsible to anyone or anything else, right? And so I think that what happened was when I ended up finding Pacifica Graduate Institute and going to school there, I was making a return to those early passions and interests. And I credit my daemon, wherever he or she is sitting, for getting me back on the path. And I think the opportunity for women in Regency right now is one of the most unbelievably brilliant opportunities women have had in history to recreate themselves and decide who they are, what they want to be, what's important to them, and take this internal power and not only use it for yourself, but for the betterment of the collective.
Yes, because that is why we're here, ultimately. As we rise, others rise with us. And
just talking about that with two colleagues yesterday, that a high tide rises all boats.
That's it.
Absolutely.
And so that's amazing. I love what you've just shared, because you're saying, you went through it and you're going through it and you went through it and you're teaching it. And isn't that empowering when your story and you're bringing that forwards for others?
The thing that I really want women to know, if there's one thing I would want women to know about this time of life, is that Regency is a 25-year period of life. In your first 25 years, from birth to 25, think of all the changes you go through, right? And they're mainly about physical markers, about growing. How's your intelligence growing? How's your body growing? How's your physique? Are you able to function well? How are you learning? How's your education? All these things are kind of based sort of in the body and how we're growing. The Regency 25 are about soul growth. And you will change as much in the 25 years of Regency as you did in your first 25 years.
Okay.
And for women going through Regency, we have a triple transformation to negotiate. We have a very different embodied experience than men do.
Mm-hmm.
Because we go through the pre-programmed physical change, which is perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. We all know that. But there's also a pre-programmed change in the human psyche in terms of the midlife shift.
Right.
We go through the physical and the psychological simultaneously.
Yes.
That often, those two, the warp and the woof, if you will, of that weaving, often create a spiritual shift at the same time.
Yes.
So we're going through this triple shift, right, at this period of time, and it can be miserable, it can be confusing, it can be depressing, it can cause anxiety. And I will just say, aging and menopause are not diseases. You are not broken, right? And you do not have a disease. You're going through one of the most fundamental transformations you will go through in your life.
You are speaking my language. You know, I took a master's in exercise and health behavior years ago, and I looked at languaging around menopause, and the reason why and why not women would or wouldn't exercise during, when we know it's like we know exercising is the key. It's key to our overall wellness and well-being and vitality, and yet it's a time where we're not always, you know, it's like we choose not to for whatever reasons, time being one of them, and you know, shift in experience as well with divorce and all of it. Anyway, my piece in all of this is, why are menopause, these 37 experiences or whatever that we experience, they are labeled as symptoms.
They're not symptoms, they're indicators.
They're indicators, they're experiences.
Yes, a symptom implies disease, which implies cure.
Exactly. And it's still going on. That language is still being used, not only by the male, or I don't really want to gender this, but by the patriarchal medical profession, also by the matriarchal. The languaging is still one of
I think people just are
empowering.
I think people are habituated into saying, "Oh, I have menopause symptoms," right? They're habituated. But this is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm working on the book that's the lay woman's version of my dissertation, so it gets a little bit out of the academic and the deep rabbit hole of academia, and talking about it. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that they are indicators that you are starting your transformation, and if you live long enough, you will go through it. And you know, for me, I am a no judgment zone. If women want to go through it naturally, that's fantastic. If women want to go through it and do supplements and herbs and nutrition and all those things, fantastic. If women want to go to their physician and they want to look at hormone replacement therapy, fantastic. I'm for every woman finding her way forward through her particular experience, right? To become the most authentic, most fulfilled version of herself in this new life stage. I'm telling you, think about all of your female ancestry behind you. They never had this opportunity.
No, they didn't.
They never had this opportunity. They're all cheering. They're like, yes,
they are.
Go. whatever it is any woman particularly wants to do. And the thing is that, you know, women come from all different backgrounds, all different mythological, religious, secular traditions, and some women have an easier time of the whole transition than others do, because we go through it individually. No one has the same experience. But I'm just encouraging women to really understand that you can participate, influence, and direct your experience of the Regency transformation, but you have to do it consciously. And it's and some women sail right through, and God bless them. Yay for them. Yay for the women who have no problems. Terrific, right? But for the most of us, we trip
Life falls apart.
we trip over a stone or two on the path. Yeah. And you're not broken. You're not broken.
You're not broken. And if you're watching here and you're here with me and Dr. Andrea Slominski, here is the message for today. There is no brokenness going on here. Menopause is the most amazing opening experience. And even when we feel it's really grotty and stuff isn't happening, life isn't working the way we want it to work, I see it as a spiritual awakening. That's how I always engaged with it, as an awakening time. And that with each hot flush, that it was an opportunity for me to breathe deeper and to go deeper within me with every breath, with every one of those experiences, although not comfortable. Not comfortable. And life does fall down, doesn't it? Or break open during this time.
I think all of us, if we look back at our lives and the period of time when we really went through growth and engagement and conscious awakening and moving forward, most of those times we're not comfortable.
Yeah.
Most of those times we're not comfortable. And even in the sense of, having an awakening, having an epiphany, having a higher spiritual experience, having one of those amazing meditative or religious experiences that just lifts you up and expands your mind and expands your heart. One of my favorite phrases is Ram Dass, well, after the ecstasy, the laundry. Yes. The laundry. Yes. After the ecstasy, the laundry.
I love it. Chop wood, carry water. It's everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Before Zen, the mountains were mountains. After Zen, the mountains are mountains. Yeah. So, yeah. But it's just, I'm really excited. I love working with women. I do workshops. I do private coaching. I teach classes.
Do you work with younger women? I'm just, as you're speaking here, because I was thinking, wouldn't it be incredible? I mean, to have this information, Regency paradigm or worldview or era or stage, and then for like planting the seeds for younger women that are coming up now. Wouldn't it be great if this was on the curriculum for all 10-year-olds? Really?
I mean, even if in high schools or college or whatever, there are the beginning, psychology classes and that kind of thing. But even if there was just people said, you're going to go, as a woman, you're going to go through physical stages and transitions. This is what's ahead of you if you live long enough. And you're going to go through psychological transitions. This is what's ahead of you if you live long enough. And of course, the young people like, oh yeah, I don't have to worry about that. Oh, I'm fine. But at least then when they started, they would go, oh, that's right. They told me about this. I have so many women that say to me, why did no one tell us about this?
Why wasn't it part of the educational curriculum? Why is it all it's shrouded in secrecy?
Well, not only that, some of it is the historical shame base around women's bodies and women's cycles.
Whose shame? The women's shame or others' shame?
Well, that it was seen as shameful, that it was seen as embarrassing. Okay. You didn't talk about it, like our grandmothers didn't talk about their menstruation difficulties or their birth difficulties or their postpartum difficulties. They didn't talk about necessarily their menopause issues or problems or health things related to it. It wasn't something that was talked about,
No.
it wasn't,
No.
I mean, going back into, early women's healthcare. I mean, women's healthcare has been and is still quite dismal, especially
Yeah.
for women of color.
Yeah.
So we're making strides, but we're not quite there yet. I mean, my own OBGYN, I lost my mom to ovarian cancer when I was 20. And so my OBGYN kept me on the pill because they wanted to keep me from ovulating, because they think that where the egg bursts out of the ovary and then that heals over, that might be where the cancer starts. So he's like, let's not have you ovulate. So I stayed on the pill until I was 50. And then he's like, well, it's time for you to come off the pill. And I'm like, well, what about menopause? What about all this? He goes, oh, you're probably done with all of that. That was all I got. That was all I got. And then within 30 days,
Yeah.
my life was upside down.
Yeah.
Upside, because I went from being regulated hormonally, from pharmaceutically, to having no estrogen. I mean, I didn't go through a decrease. I went like a nose dive swimming pool.
Oh my word. Oh my gosh.
So,
Right.
and this was like, what, 15 years ago? So, it's still not where it could be. I mean, menopause is coming out of the closet. Lots of people are talking about it. It's fantastic. There are new websites. There's Menopause Matters. There's all these different things in these places you can go. But even still, there's not a lot of discussion about the inner psyche, about the soul, about the transformation of how psyche and soul transform at the same time as the body, and how they're interlinked. Dr. Christiane Northrup has talked about it quite a bit for the past 20 years. She's really the only one that I know of that talks about it as extensively as she does. So there's so much that goes on during this period, but and it's hard, and there's a lot of change, but there's so much opportunity to recreate yourself. And that's what I really encourage women to do, to recreate themselves after spending 20 years, 30 years tending everyone else's garden.
Yes. And I just, you're showcasing it with how you have discovered it for yourself, and you're now sharing this wisdom with other women in groups and private one-to-one coaching and the workshops that you give, and continuing to write and study, I'm sure, and provide content for women.
Mm-hmm.
And do you ever see yourself, like, I think, I mean, I can never see myself retiring. Do you ever see yourself retiring?
As long as I can keep contributing, I love what I do.
Right.
My mission is to ease suffering. My mission is to ease suffering for women and to help them recreate themselves. So as long as I can continue to do that, as long as I have my faculties and I can continue to work, I think about the really amazing female psychotherapists like Marion Woodman, who were well into their 80s. I mean, my dissertation chair, one of the most well-known feminist writers on the goddess tradition, Christine Downing, and she was teaching right up until her 90s. I mean, when she was my dissertation chair and my professor, she was in her mid 80s, standing up for 8 hours at a whack teaching. So the possibilities are, of course, it depends on our genetics. It depends on our socioeconomic background. It depends on our access to healthcare. It depends on
our intention.
Yeah, and our intention. And so,
our intention.
I don't see myself saying formally retiring. No. How my career will go from here, we'll just have to let the goddess decide where I'm going, and just go where I'm needed.
And I'd like to talk a little bit on the labyrinth, about the labyrinth.
Sure.
And and also just to I mean, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? First of all, the labyrinth, and how the labyrinth has how's it shifted your understanding of life? What does the labyrinth mean for you personally? How did you get to know about the labyrinth? What is it about the labyrinth for you that you know of it as a really empowering self development tool?
Yeah, good
What
question.
is the importance of the labyrinth for you?
Well, I think back to, my childhood and my teens, or even in the 20s, traveling in Europe and seeing labyrinths in churches and thinking how cool they were. And that's kind of a cool design and that's neat. And I know I get that people used it as a spiritual thing, but not really cluing into it until really I hit midlife, right? Which is, what Carl Jung says: when we leave the outer world of accomplishment and enter the inner world of soul and psyche, we go in deep, right? We go into the deeper world. And the labyrinth to me is a spiritual tool that we can use to follow a thread to unravel almost any issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a tool that, as you enter the labyrinth and the further and further in you go, it's metaphoric and symbolic of going deeper and deeper and deeper into yourself, coming to really deep self-knowledge, coming to realize not only the wonderful, magnificent parts, but the shadow parts, the part of ourselves that are rejected, that are repressed, that are left in the shadow because we don't want to look at them, because maybe they're a little bit less flattering in terms of who we are. And to be able to explore all these aspects of ourselves, to be able to really know ourselves. And the further and further you go into the labyrinth, metaphorically, you can use it to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the self, and to see what it is, what needs to be healed, what
Mm-hmm.
traumas are you carrying, what stones are you constantly tripping over?
Yeah.
We think we're over it, but really it's kind of attached to our leg. And every time we swing our leg forward, the stone loops around and is in front of us again. And we trip over it again, and we loop our leg around and the stone comes forward to try to discover where it is we need to grow. What aspects of ourselves do we need to work on? And then when we make that discovery and then we start to work our way back out, it's almost like a heroine's journey where we take that treasure of that self-knowledge, right, back out of the labyrinth, back
Yes.
from the deep worlds of psyche to the everyday world, right? And then able to use that information to grow and learn and become more intentional and conscious and authentic, more
Yes.
authentically ourselves.
Do you work with the labyrinth personally?
I work with the labyrinth in terms of it being a metaphor. As far as
Right.
I know, there isn't one that's geographically close to me. But yes, as a metaphor, I work with the labyrinth frequently.
Yes.
The idea of the multiple ways of looking at the labyrinth, from Ariadne's story, right, where she actually unspools the thread of her life for someone else to be able to go in and conquer, right, the beast, right, which we could look at as the shadow,
Yeah.
the cultural shadow of that particular mythology, of that particular mythological culture, right? Or you could look at it as your own beast or whatever, and then following the thread back out, right? But for all her gifts, for her having unspooled the thread of her life, which for women in Greece at that time, they would have spent a considerable amount of time spinning and weaving.
Yes.
And that was probably thread that she spun herself onto
Right.
a distaff, right? From her hands, like spinning and weaving, that she onto a distaff. And so then when he comes back, when Theseus comes back and he says, oh, I'm going to take you, and we're going to be my bride and all these things. Well, we know what happened in the story, right? Her gift, as well as herself, right, were rejected, were left behind, right? Were used, rejected, and left behind. And a lot of women have had that experience in their lives. It's a wonderful mythological tool for women who've been disrespected, abused, misused, disregarded in their lives. It's a wonderful myth for the reclamation of the self. Because
and even
of
if
course, she's
even
rescued
if
ISIS and all the different things that happen. Yeah.
yes, wow. Even if it's not another that's rejecting, we can reject those parts of ourselves. That can be a very powerful, thing, that the tool of the labyrinth can be a reclamation of the way that we have rejected ourselves.
Absolutely.
Parts of ourselves that we don't want to own because of the shame, as you were talking about, or the guilt, or not good enough.
Right. We become exiled from ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, we become exiled from ourselves. And that's actually a conversation I was just telling you earlier. That's part of the high tide rise all boats conversation that we were talking about, the exile of the self, right? That the othering of the self, or the othering of individuals through culture, right? Through patriarchy, through, the patriarchal construct of men first, others, women entirely, right? As the not primary half of the human race. So, but yeah, the labyrinth is an incredibly powerful tool for opening up self-compassion, self-understanding, for opening up ideas, concepts, and self-knowledge of what we need to work on.
Yes.
We still have left to do. And the self-compassion is part of that, because walking the labyrinth is not meant to be a walking to the cross, right, so to speak, metaphorically. It's meant to be a return to the mother,
right,
a return to the origin, a return to the place of one's beginning.
create.
Right? Yes. Which from antiquity was considered to be feminine, because early mythologies, not all, but many saw the cosmos as the womb of the great mother, and out from the womb came all matter and all creation. And so that would, of course, include us. So returning to the center of the labyrinth is to return to the beginning.
So it's such a powerful tool for now, with what we are in this Regency paradigm. The labyrinth as a tool can really help us to remember who we are.
Absolutely.
In truth.
Absolutely. It's a great tool on what I keep referring to as the heroine's path.
Yes.
Which is the path to reclaiming, rediscovering, and recreating.
And for me, the labyrinth, the piece that I always love, is that as close as I think that I am when I'm journeying to the heart, I then get kind of spat out back onto the outer edge. And it's like, oh, I thought I was there already.
Yes, you hit a switchback. Exactly.
Hang on a minute.
Exactly.
That's such a metaphor, isn't it? That we think we're there, and then there's another turn, another meander, another learning, another symbolic piece to look at, another way of looking at life, another direction.
Exactly. In my practice, I call it a swerve and a plot twist. we all have
swerve and a plot.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's true, because you think you're almost there.
Yeah.
You think you're almost there, and you think, oh, I'm almost there,
Oh,
I'm almost there. And then it's like, no, there's a whole nother. And so it's that spiralic path
yes.
that
Yes.
that consciousness develops on, and we come back around, and all the nodal points of this particular issue always line up again
With that.
to the beginning, right?
And it doesn't make sense because it's not in a logical order. It's not as if we are spiraling in one direction the whole time in the labyrinth. There will be turns in strange places.
Mm-hmm.
Such a metaphor for menopause, isn't it? Or for midlife, for regency, for
Life stage,
all our lives.
yeah, everything that we don't expect. You know,
Yeah.
every time we think we have it handled, something new comes up.
Yes.
You know, a woman's middle name is change. That's all I can say.
Love that.
Middle name is change.
Love that.
So yeah,
Verona is here. Just welcoming in Reverend Verona here. So great that you're here with us. You agree how movement brings deepening exposure and labyrinths. Yeah, movement. That's the thing, isn't it? When we're in the labyrinth, we're free to move and dance and have that sense of just movement. It's beautiful.
absolutely. I think, and one of the things that I tell my clients is that, and you were speaking of exercise earlier, if you're feeling psychologically stuck, if you're feeling like you're in a place you don't want, move. Go outside
Yes.
for a walk. If you move your
Yes.
body, your thoughts will move. Move
Yes.
your body, your thoughts will move. And so the movement, the idea of movement in the labyrinth as a metaphor for movement in life is brilliant.
Oh, yes.
Because I tell my clients, I say, if you're in the underworld, for God's sake, don't sit down.
Right.
Keep moving.
Right. Keep moving. Yeah.
You sit down next to the river Lethe, and we won't see you again. You will forget.
Mm.
You know, so the idea is, yes, to keep moving. And the labyrinth is such a brilliant way of imaging it and metaphoring it. I mean, even thinking of your life on a daily basis, imagining that everything that you go through, from your getting up and your routine and you're going to work and coming home and taking care of the things you do, are all a part of your daily labyrinth. Absolutely.
And something that's just come into my mind, just popped in as we're speaking here, about this regency state and the relationships that we have with if we have children, or the inner child. Let's keep it to the inner child and our parents. And again, being in this kind of triangle of healing, there's so much opportunity for healing at this time, isn't there? With really looking at the idea of transitioning, and then looking at our own children, our inner child that, you know, still wants to be a child and doesn't want to grow up, and rebelling in so many different ways. It's like all of these are aspects of ourselves, aren't they? That we can.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I don't know how many, if I had to write down all the different selves that I have and all the different roles I filled and all the different people I've been, there'd be a huge cast of characters behind me, right? Standing on the stage play of my life, right? Metaphor, of course, because my background is theater. But the idea is that the inner child is the inner child and will always be the inner child. The adolescent self will always be the adolescent self. And so the work of consciousness, of positive aging, of growing towards authenticity, or what Jung called individuation, is being able to embrace all of these selves, right, for who they were and who they are, right, and be able to look at what the inner child didn't receive, the adolescent didn't receive, and to be able to give it to that part of yourself.
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
To be able to sit down and have literally an imaginative conversation or journal it out in your journal, a conversation with your inner child. Do you know
Yes.
how old we are now? Do you know that what we're doing now? Do you know that we're safe now? Do you know that whatever it is that you need to journal or converse with that aspect of yourself, to reincorporate that into ourselves? Because
Yes.
whatever the faults and foibles and mistakes of our parents, our families, our ancestors, right? We can only heal what is within ourselves. We cannot change the past.
Right.
It is possible to find a level of integration and healing from that, with the knowledge of who we are now, and with knowledge and compassion for those who made the mistakes. Right?
And forgiveness.
Yeah, that's maybe a little harder sometimes, but for some clients, but with being able to look at generational trauma, for example, and being able to look at it and see where it came from and how it was passed down, and to be and I've told clients of mine who've actually been able to break that in the way they've raised their own children or the way that they've lived their life. And I say, you have to realize you are a walking miracle.
Yeah. And so it comes into this word that you use, our middle name is change. Changing it for ourselves so that we're not recreating the patterns of those that we are blaming, or that may have, we're not agreeing with, or we can be that change. And isn't it ironic that in the 50s, the menopause was called the change? That was like the tagline for menopause, wasn't it?
Exactly. She's going through
the change.
She's going through the change. Yes, she's going through the change. And what's happening is all the things that she repressed, and all the little slights, and all the little things, and all the responses, and all the slights and all the hurts that were all put aside for the betterment of the collective are now roaring back like a dragon. Exposed. Yeah, they come back like a dragon, and you better get out of the way because she's going to burn down the village.
And maybe that's the beast in the middle of the labyrinth.
Well, like I tell my clients, the ideal thing is to be able to, whatever metaphor you use, to be able to identify the dragon, and to be able to liberate the dragon in a way that's not going to actually burn down everything around you all the time, right? We could talk metaphors and ideas all day. I mean, this is what I love. But I just think that, it is possible to recollect yourselves to yourself, and nurture them, and to look at who you are, what your gifts are, right? Who you want to become, what you want to do, what you want to contribute, and to be able to embody these aspects of the archetypal feminine to yourself and to the collective.
Yes.
Because if you can't love yourself first, right? If you can't find it within yourself to forgive yourself for your faults, for your shortcomings, for whatever it is that you have, right? For your incorrect self-assumptions, or your incorrect self-view, and to change that idea. We were talking yesterday, it was like a mirror on the wall. Who am I after all?
Right.
Who am I really?
Who am I really?
Yeah. Right. And this midlife time is the time when we are able to look back at ourselves and say, okay, wow, I have time to figure out who I am now, with all my life experience, with all my wisdom, with all my career experience. Who am I now? What have I learned? How can I help?
And I just want to add in here before, because I'm being aware of time and we're coming up to the hour, that this doesn't always happen as a planned exercise, does it? Often it's because life is falling apart in some way, shape or form. And it's like we're given this amazing opportunity to ask these deeper questions rather than continuing with the habit of being on a wheel of doing what we did because we thought it was what we should do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't, there are people, men, women I deal with who say, yes, it's now time for me to do this, that, or the other thing. But the doing of it is a path that you cannot see before you.
Right.
You have to walk it. It appears as you walk it. Yeah. And there are always surprises. There's always challenges. Right. There's always boons. There are always gifts. There are always swerves, right? Turns in the labyrinth. There are always unexpected turns. But it's an unprecedented opportunity. So the question is, are you going to be the captive or are you going to be the heroine? Because they're two sides of the same coin, right? Which one are you going to be? Which one are you going to be?
This is where we're ending it for today on this question. Are you going to be the captive, the victim, or are you going to be the heroine? Which one are you going to be? A powerful question. And thank you, Dr. Andrea, for being here and for sharing, and your wisdom, your insight and knowledge and the conversation. I love it. You're welcome here onto the Women of Power show at any point in time you feel you'd like to share. Come back, please, next year and talk again.
I would love to, Laura. Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant to spend this hour with you and your listeners. And I'm just really excited to have connected with you.
Yes.
Yeah, I look forward to collaborating with you on a number of things.
Fantastic. And you, for viewers, watchers, listeners, you can find Dr. Andrea here at her website and on YouTube. Lots of really incredible things on the website. Have a good look through. It's really interesting. All sorts of offerings, and of course, Dr. Andrea's coaching programs and teachings and groups and classes. They're all there on the website. And your new book, The Victory of Ariadne. You can flash that if you have it. But there we go. We didn't mention it.
It's a little book about the adventures of Ariadne as it might help women who've had a difficult time with disrespect and abandonment and other issues around that in their life. It's a little book, but it's an expansion story about your story metaphor. Yeah. So
beautiful.
Thank you
again, Dr. Andrea, for being here, and thank you to the viewers for watching and being present here with the Women of Power show today. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.